A few months ago, I was tagging along with my girlfriend and we were in Delhi and we were interviewing this guy who is a scientist. He studies glaciers, you know, those big chunks of ice on mountains. So he was studying that and he was telling us some really interesting things. Just to get started, any of you guys have any idea how many glaciers there are in India? Any guesses?
9,000.
She knows it, but it was about 10,000. And given that this is 10,000, any idea how many of these are being studied by scientists, monitored on a regular basis? Just guess something.
2,000.
No, it's about 10. That's it. 10 of 10,000 is all that we are studying. And the reason we should all be freaked out about this is because, climate is changing, glaciers are melting, and Indian glaciers are responsible for providing water for 600 million people. And if these melt or change in some way, this water system is going to change. So this guy, this scientist in Delhi, he's trying to change this whole thing. And the way he's doing it is with a glacier boot camp. It sounds fun. It is roughly what you think it to be. They take a bunch of 20-something graduate students and they sort of, give them a little bit of classroom training and then they pack them off to a glacier. So they can live in tents, drill holes in the ice, learn how to live and manage to survive in -10 degrees and come back alive, and also take on this profession for the rest of their lives. They hope that at least a few of these kids would end up becoming glaciologists. So, I was really, the first time he said glacier boot camp, I was like, whoa, that's sweet. And the other thing which interested me was that this scientist, he's from Tamil Nadu. And as most of you here would know, there's just 3 kinds of weather in Tamil Nadu, right? It's hot, very hot, and oh my god, my pants are on fire, hot, right? And this guy and despite being from there, he's now one of India's top glacier people. And he's finding young kids and then sending them off to freeze their butts off in the glacier. There was something about that contradiction that I really liked. And I'm from Tamil Nadu as well. So I figured that if he can do it, so can I, right? So I said, look, I'd like to join you as a journalist, come be in your group, write about what you guys are doing. So he said, fine, whatever. A few weeks later, I'm at work and I get this call. It's from his deputy. And he's he's talking to me about what I do, just doing a background check and stuff. And then he's like, so what's your climbing experience? I was like, I've climbed mountains here and there, the Western Ghats, like Mathiran, and this mountain in Malaysia, yeah, done quite a bit. And he's like, Malaysia? What's the altitude? I was like, it's about 5,000 meters or 4,500 meters around there. Yeah, it's the tallest mountain in the whole of Southeast Asia. He's like, just wait a minute. There is no mountain in the whole of that region which is that high. What are you talking about? I'm like, no, it's there. You can Google it. It's called Kinabalu. And it's maybe a little less, maybe about 4,000 or 3,500, something like that. There was this pause and he's like, that doesn't count. Anything else? I'm like, no, that's it. Then he was like, are you fit enough to do this? It's a really tough climb. Are you sure you can do it? Are you fit? I'm like, yeah, totally. I run every day. I'm pretty fit. I have run a marathon. I was the last guy to finish and I had to be hospitalized afterwards, but he didn't need to know that. So then he just gave up at some point and he's like, fine, look, are you sure you want to come? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So we figured out the dates, I go shopping, I pick up the boots, the sleeping bags, the water bottles, the torches. You need to look like a professional trekker when you're going to these things. So I got all that, ended up at Manali, spent the day acclimatizing, and the next day we set off very early in the morning. If any of you guys have been to Rohtang, you'd know the first section of the road to get there is great. It's like a perfect road, normal road. And then you cross Rohtang because there's a whole bunch of tourists, like a gazillion tourists who go there every day pretty much, so the roads are good. But then you cross that place and the road just disappears. It goes from asphalt to rocks basically. So if you have a heart issue or a back condition, don't even think about going there. So we cross that. There's a 30-kilometer stretch which takes you a good 3 or 4 hours. You reach this place, we cross a river, climb up this little hill, and we're at the base camp. That's 3,800 meters. And I was like, that's easy, 40 minutes, that wasn't hard. It's a nice base camp. It's 5 tents overlooking this vast valley, and behind us is this huge mountain, almost like a wall, and there's a stream next to it, so it's a nice place. All the students had gotten there about a week earlier. And they had all become acclimatized. I mean, I didn't know what this word means, but they were like, they acclimatized. And it was a field trip, right? So they were all running about, measuring rocks, doing surveys, taking down stuff on their notebooks, what students do in a field trip, making fun of each other, things like that. And but for me, when I was there walking around with them, I noticed something different, like something was happening inside me. I didn't know what it was, but something was sort of changing. And later that day, when my stomach started going berserk and there was like bombs going off inside my stomach, I just assumed that it must be because of the stuff that I had in Manali. I mean, right? You go all the way to Manali. And then there were also these headaches. And it was a very new kind of headache. I've never experienced that before. It's like your skull is like shrinking and it's pressing your head from every possible side. And I did everything I could. I took my Crocin, I took Tylenol, I drank 2 bottles of water, I took notes on my notepad hoping that something would just change if I do that. Nothing. There was no effect whatsoever. And that night was pretty bad. I hardly slept. But next morning, surprisingly enough, I was perfectly fine. So we started going. We started heading towards the glacier. Now, for most of you, when I say the word glacier, the image that you probably get in your mind would be of this place, which is, sky blue ice that extends and then a valley of snow or something like that, right? Seeing images on Nat Geo or Discovery Channel or whichever. But the Himalayas are slightly different, actually very different. First of all, they have a lot of rocks. The scientists in their scientisty jargon like to call it debris. I prefer to call it insaniyat ka dushman, enemy of humanity, basically. And the reason why I do that is because these are not rocks, these are giant boulders, each the size of a washing machine or a fridge, and they are everywhere. There is no path. You have to jump over them, jump from one to the other, go beside them, go next to them, and you can do it for 15 minutes. Afterwards, it's just like really annoying. And that's just the first stage. You go higher up, the rocks become even bigger, as big as my Maruti car, basically, and they are all over the place. Little further up, it's all ice. And it's not just ice. There's crevasses running all over. These big cracks that look nice from the distance. When you go close, it's just dark and scary. And then there are these things, they call it moulins. They're like drains, basically. Big holes in the glacier. You can't see them. When you come close, it's too slippery and you'll fall straight in. And there's water draining in through these things. And right from the first day, actually even before we got there, the scientists kept telling us, don't go near the glaciers, don't go near the moulins. They're very dangerous, very, very dangerous. You're telling this to a bunch of students, so you know what they'll do, right? Like, we found out every single glacier and crevasse and moulin, and everyone was taking photos with it. I mean, all our profile photos now feature crevasses, basically. I mean, this is not to say that these were not scary. These were pretty dangerous. But the most dangerous thing on the mountain was a very different and an invisible enemy, the altitude. All through my life, I've never had any motion sickness, air sickness, sea sickness, any of those sicknesses. So I just assumed that altitude sickness is probably the same kind of thing, right? A disease that happens to other people. Yeah. We started walking that day, and within about 6 hours we reached this place called the Snout. It's the beginning of the glacier. So it looks like this big chunk of ice, and there's a stream of water coming right below it. And the rocks have become bigger, we are walking through it, my headache started, and out of the blue, one of the girls who's from Bangalore, she just stops. And she goes, I can't see anything. What has happened was that her vision became fully blurry. It's sort of, she was able to see everything fine first, and then out of the blue it just became like somebody made her wear thick glasses. It was like that. Everything went blurry. And the organizers, the students, me, none of us had seen anything like this before. And we had no idea what was going on. The nearest doctor was about 7 hours away in Manali. And her thing just kept getting worse. Her blackouts kept happening more often. And when these things happen, rumors spread. And the rumor here was the one thing that we'd all Googled about, which was high altitude cerebral edema. Everyone thought she had that. And some of you are laughing, so you probably know what it is. It is as horrible as it sounds. Your brain fills up with fluid, you go into a coma, you can die in 2 days. And here's the thing, more people die from edema on mountains than from avalanches or landslides. This is the biggest killer on the mountains. So of course, when this rumor came, people were really freaked out. They said, we just got to take her out. So that night, in the middle of the night, they just brought her back to the ground, and that was the last we heard from her. This is sort of the thing about altitude sickness. It can hit different people in different ways. I mean, I was there as a journalist, right? So my plan was to like interview people when they are doing their thing, take photos, shoot videos, and so forth. But I could do nothing. I spent hours, literally hours, sitting inside the tent just praying. Like I had my mantras, I would chant, hoping that this pain would go away. Because there was nothing else to do there. And the first night, we were now at the mid-camp, which is at about 4,200 meters. That was horrible. First I had these bizarre dreams, as if people were coming with sticks to beat me. And at this point, I was sleeping on my side, inside the sleeping bag, and then I turned to sleep on my back, and then I find that the two fingers of my hand, left hand, I just can't feel them. Like, there's no feeling whatsoever. I can't move them, I can't feel them, and I begin freaking out. Because before coming, I'd read about frostbites and how common they are, and I figured, oh my god, this is a frostbite. They're going to amputate my finger, I need to do something. And I'm just like shaking my hands. I'm trying to get out of the sleeping bag, and it's really hard to get out of the sleeping bag when you fall bolted in. But then you come up, and then I'm waving it crazy. And when I'm doing this, somehow one of the fingers goes and pricks my left eye. But I can't feel the damn finger, right? It's like, nah. All I know is that my eyes are hurting, and the first thought that comes to my mind is that I slept with my contacts on, and I slept with it, so it's gone and cut my cornea or whatever, and I'm going blind. I mean, I know it sounds pretty ridiculous, right? I don't know if it's the cold or the low oxygen at that altitude or what, but my brain was just not functioning. I was freaking out like crazy. And all this while, mind you, my roommate, tent mate, Virender Singh, he had no idea. He was just like blissfully asleep, no idea that I'm completely losing it here. Eventually, of course, I checked, my contact lenses were in their place, I was fine. I barely got any sleep that night as well. But next morning we had to head out, and it was science time. So you know how we all know that glaciers are melting at a pretty fast pace around the world. But what's important is that how fast is each glacier melting? How is this one as opposed to the other? And this day was devoted to figuring that out. And the way they do it, they've been doing it for the last 200 years everywhere, is that you drill holes on the ice, and then you take these bamboo sticks and you put them in, and you check the level every year. So first time when you put them in, it does this much that you can see, and the next year it becomes this much. You know that the glacier has sort of receded. That's how you do for all the glaciers. I mean, that's the only way to do it. So they were doing this, we finished that, people took their selfies, had a little fun, and then we started climbing. We were now at the mid-camp, and we had to go to the high camp, it was about 600 meters, but these 600 meters were fascinating. The landscape just changes dramatically. First, it's this jungle of boulders, right? No paths, nothing, just rocks. Then you come to these ice places, almost fully filled with ice. And then there's places where you have crevasses and moulins all over the place. You're going between them, you're trying to jump over them. And then finally you come to this steep slope, and it's like rock, ice, why am I here? Why can't I be on a beach? Rock, ice. And then you come to this plain, it's sort of like a clearing, and then you look up and you're like, whoa! I can't possibly begin to describe how that looked, so I'm just going to try. It was like, I'm standing here, and it's like a river of snow that begins just in front of me, and then it starts, and then it fans out and covers everything. There are like 4 mountain chains, everything covered in snow. The sky is blue, the peaks are the only thing you can see. It's almost like you were in the Himalayas, but then suddenly you're in Switzerland, like in a Hindi movie or something. It was bizarre. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was just like lost at that point. And you know, for me at least, my glacier experience, for these guys, their job was to study it and learn to be a glaciologist. My job was to report it, right? But the way I saw it, it was like I was always, like every day, fighting a battle with the mountain. And it was literally like a battle. Before heading out every day, I'd prepare. I'd like take Dispirin, put it in every single pocket. 2 bottles of water, 1 hot, 1 not so hot. A banana, 2 energy bars, a boiled egg for some weird reason, and chocolate. Everything has to be there. And all I knew was that when the pain comes, I just need to hit it with everything I got. And that's just the only way I could survive. But then, the pain was pretty bad, but there were few moments. Sometimes it would be a few minutes, or it could be an hour maybe, when there'd be no pain whatsoever. And those moments were just like the most magical periods ever. Like, I haven't felt that alive in like ever. I can't remember when was the last time I felt that way. Everything seems better. It's like you're seeing the world in regular TV and then you have HD 55-inch screen. It's basically that. Like, the sky was better, the air, you can feel it going inside your lungs. And the night's even better. Like, it's minus 10 degrees, nobody goes out, but I would get out of the tent so I can just stare at the sky, because you see all the stars, and 5 minutes looking at any place, you'd see a shooting star come by. I mean, how often do you see that, right? That kind of help, those moments just cut it from me. And it made me think about this. You know, glaciers, at some level, there's a contradiction here. They are cold, dreary, horrible, hopeless places, but they are also one of the most breathtakingly beautiful places on the planet. And they are extremely critical. It's because of the glaciers that all our North Indian rivers have water all year round. And if they were to start melting or melt really fast, you'd have massive floods in some places and droughts in other places. So it was really important to study all this. And all this came through one night in my head. And the next morning, this was the last day on the high camp, and the job today was to go to the top of the glacier and get some samples from there. So we could see the top from the high camp. It looked like this ridge in the distance. And all of you know, in Himalayas, what you see is never what you get. It's two completely different things. And this was all snow walking today, so we all had like big snow boots. We had these bright pink pads over them, looked pretty cool and funny. And we also had the ropes. So each person we had a holster, we had a harness, and each person had a rope. I mean, nobody had any idea what to do with the ropes, but we had a rope, so safe, like a seatbelt. So we had that, and we started heading off, and we have 5 of us going on this path on the snow towards the ridge. After 3 painful hours, we get to the ridge. And guess what? There's like 3 more ridges on each side. And our team leader, who has to be this ultra-fit Ladakhi guy, right? And he's like, yeah, we have to cross 4 more there, but there could be some more. We'll go there and figure out. At which point, not just me, everybody is like losing it. We're just like, oh my God, when's this going to get over? Me, of course, I was literally dying at that point. My head was about to explode. Just standing was hurting a lot. And just as we were walking, there was a bit of commotion up ahead. I didn't know what it was. Somebody was screaming. Then my team leader, who was like going back, he turns around and he runs all the way front. And then there's this girl who was before me. She screams something and she starts running. And we're all tied with the rope, right? If she runs, I have to run. I have no choice. So I was like, fine, whatever. So I run, I stop. And then I realized the guy who was right in front, Roshan, that's the name they were shouting, he had stepped over a crevasse, like a deep, dark crack. And he didn't see it because it was all covered in the ice, and he just fell. We just saw him going down. But incredibly enough, he had this really big and annoying backpack, which as he fell got stuck in the rocks over there. So he was in this like half here, half there kind of a place. And mind you, this guy is like the most confident, brash guy. He's from Sikkim anyway. And he was like literally shivering at that point. And I saw all this from about 5 meters away, and I could see it, but I was not really processing any of it. Because, you know, I'm looking at it, but I'm really thinking about how I can tear my head out. Because, like, I can't think, I can hardly even see anything, and this whole thing is happening. It's like a shock, exactly. I mean, if you look back now, it feels like a shock. He was fine, thankfully, we could pull him out. We quickly pulled him out, and things were fine, but at that point I realized I can't go anymore. It's just stupid. Like if I go, it's a risk for these guys as well. So I just told them, look, I'm taking this off, you guys go ahead. So they went ahead, they got their samples a little further, and I just fell right on the ice there and just slept. Which was quite nice, because it was the quietest place on the glacier, and by consequence, everything. No bird sounds, no wind, no ceiling fan, no mobile phone ring signals, nothing. And it sort of, it was just one of those places where the only voice you could hear was just your breathing at that point. And finally these guys came back, we came down, and this was the last day on the mountain. And guess what? I had no headaches whatsoever, which meant that I've perfectly acclimatized, just as it was time to leave the damn mountain. Which was... And we had a campfire, as you do in these things. All those bamboo rods that we didn't stick into the ground had to be burnt. The cooks made good rajma rice for all of us. It was nice. And you know, when you've got 30 people from literally Kashmir to Kanyakumari in this group, and they've been stuck on a mountain for 3 weeks, there's only one thing that they can all agree on as a way to like detox and chill out, which is to play Himesh Reshammiya all night long, basically. That's all was there to do. Which is roughly where I should end, right? Which is where the story should end. But I had a job to do, unfortunately, and as the journalists in the room would know, easy part is to travel and the tough part is to actually come back and write the whole thing. So I was sitting down to write it, and I just remembered the previous evening, I had gone to see my doctor, and I told her very triumphantly that, look, I went here, I did all this, but I had this headache. And she's like, you idiot. The altitude headaches are like a message. You should have Googled that, you would have seen it. And it's your body telling you that you are going too fast. You need to stop, stay where you are, acclimatize, let the pain go, and then go ahead. You can't just show up and then be like, I want to go here, pike camp, this camp, that camp. She's like, you're just stupid. You could have almost killed yourself. And I was like, funny, yeah. Next time. But her words also made me wonder on a deeper level. We as journalists, or even for that matter, just to me, myself, we tend to live our lives like you're always in control. Like we want to do everything on our schedule, do it the way we want. We are always in control of where we are going, when we are going. But when you come face to face with nature in its true, raw, basic self, you have no control whatsoever. You're just a leaf floating down a river, basically. So all you can do is stay in the moment and just go with the flow. Thank you.